Welcome to toy-polloi.
Hello and welcome to another video from toy-polloi. Now in my box of bits I've found the remains of an Optimus Prime, and I thought it'd be quite a fun job to see if we could restore this Optimus Prime to his former glory, even though the bits that I'm starting with are pretty beaten up and there's an awful lot missing. As you can see here in front of me, there really isn't that much of Prime left. I've got a very small part of his main body section, which includes his head, which is a useful part. I have one fist, his left fist there, and we have the remains of the trailer section, which is in really quite a sorry state. If I open this up, you'll see that, well, not only is there a big chunk of that bit missing, the little sort of robot arm bit is broken and snapped off, and the usual little area that the ramp attaches to is snapped on one side, and it really is just in a generally sorry state. I don't even think the launcher mechanism particularly works on it, so it's a really beaten up Prime, but there is enough here that I think it's worthwhile trying to fix him. So I did a quick search on eBay and I was lucky enough to win an auction for a Prime that is pretty much the exact opposite of this one. So all the bits that are broken on this one are not broken on the one I bought. So let's bring in the other Prime. So here we have the cab section. As you can see, it's missing the head section, but everything else is there, apart from the front bumper there is snapped off, but all the sort of major bits are there. So we can use this to rebuild this Prime. And if I bring the trailer section in here, you can see that it has the opposite side of the ramp is snapped, so we should be able to fix that. Both sides are in reasonable condition and the arm is not busted up here, but on this one the little launch button is snapped off there, so that launch mechanism doesn't work either. So really there's enough here that we can at least start work on restoring Optimus Prime. So for this video we're going to concentrate on the trailer section because I think that's the easiest bit to fix first, and I'm still missing a few bits that I want to get for the cab section. So while I'm hunting for those, we might as well get this area sort of fixed up. Now these are two different versions of the cab section, and we can see that if I tip these over and we look at the bottom, this is the one that I had originally, and on the bottom of it you can see it says copyright Hasbro 1980-1982, and inside this little circle it says T4. Now if we look at the one that I picked up off eBay, this one says copyright Takara 1980-1982, and then underneath it says made in France, and it will say T2 inside the little circle. So you can tell that these are slightly different versions of the trailer section. And another sort of key area that you can see the difference is if we look at the little sort of repair arm thing. This one has an orange little glass canopy there, and the one on this one is a sort of smoky grey. So really I'm just going to take the best bits of each of these. I'm not going to worry too much about it being one particular build or one particular version of it. I'm just going to take the best bits of each and we'll make the best trailer section we can out of these. So the first thing to do is to start taking these to pieces so that we can give everything a good clean. Now the great thing with Transformers is that they're very easy to take apart because 9 times out of 10 it's just screwed together. If we turn over this rear truck section, you can see there's an awful lot of screws on the bottom, and you just need a Phillips screwdriver to be able to unscrew all of these, and make sure that you sort of take note of where all the screws come from. Obviously with this I'm filming it, but if I wasn't filming it I would have a camera here and I'd take photos of everything as I start taking it apart. So the first thing we're going to do on this is actually take off these side panels. Now the broken one on this side, it's actually broken here where the little hinge section for the rear ramp goes, which makes it a lot easier that you can then just pull out the metal rod that holds on the side section. We should then be able to remove that, and this is one that we're not going to bother keeping, so I'll throw that away. And also this rod is bent, so I'm not going to bother keeping that one. Then the one on the other side, that's a little bit trickier to get out. Really what you've got to do is turn it over and then use a screwdriver or something like that, and you can push this end here out a little bit just by pushing the screwdriver in, and once it's pushed a little way you should then be able to grab the metal rod at that end, pull that out and take off the other side of the truck. Now that that's removed, I can immediately see there's a little bit more damage to this section than I'd imagined, but I don't think any of it's going to cause us too much problems. What I'm hoping to do is to be able to cut off this section of the other trailer where it's not broken on there and glue it in place here. And you can see there's also a little crack here to one of the little hinge sections, but I think we should be able to just slightly bend that and glue that back in place. So we can now carry on and remove all of the screws and take this apart. It should then become clear why this little spring mechanism isn't working, but if it doesn't, I will work that out when we come to put it together. I'm also going to swap out this little arm here. This one could be fixed because it's just snapped here, but it's very rusty, so we might as well just use the good one that we've got from the other trailer section. So let's get this all unscrewed and into pieces so that we can give it a good clean. So that's all the screws removed, and we can now start removing this bottom section. It should just sort of unclip. I think it's held in at this end just by a couple of little clips, so we can just move that apart. And then you can see there's the spring mechanism that is part of the launch section. So again, you just got to remember roughly where that is, and so we can unhook it. As you can see, it's all sort of come apart quite easily. Again, take off the little supports, and we can then pick and choose the bits we want to keep and the bits we want to clean for full restoration. The last bit to take apart is the little sort of internal robot with sort of fixing arms. Now this was the one that was broken, it was snapped off here, so I've thrown away the arm because I'm not going to use that. I've taken the 4 screws out, and it does have some little launchers in this, so I reckon if I unping this, some bits may fly out, but let's see what happens when we come to do that. So by just opening the back, I should be able to remove these arms like so, because they're just going to be clipped in place. Actually, that one can't be removed because of the way it's constructed, and we should be able to just open that. Oh yeah, there's just a few little firing mechanism bits in there. In fact, there are no springs in this. This tends to suggest that this is definitely a UK one, because the UK ones had the firing mechanism on the main part of the trailer reduced so that it wouldn't fire very hard, and it looks like they've taken the springs out of these as well, so that these missiles actually would never fire. So I'm going to take apart the other one and we'll see what that's like and see whether that has better springs in it, and which ones we want to use in the final restoration of this ship. But I think for now this piece I'm not going to bother with. We'll look at the other one, see what's in there. And here we have the little sort of robot fixing arm from the other one. This one is actually in a lot better condition. The only sort of problems with this one is that this ball section here is incredibly loose. I can't remember if the other one was like that. So I'm actually going to leave this one together for now, and I'll clean it as it is, because I can actually see these springs are inside this one, so this must not be a British release. So we might as well just leave that one together and we'll clean that as is. So really, if I show you the pile of stuff I have here, there's an awful lot of bits, all of which need a good clean. Some of them are particularly filthy, especially all of these bits. They're absolutely covered in dust and dirt and grime, so I'm going to give all of this a good wash, and then once that's done we can start fixing the issues, which are really probably the hardest one to fix is this little section here. As you can see, this is the one I'm going to fix, but it's missing this side. This one has that side, but it's got a broken tab here, so I don't think we can fix the broken tab, but I'm sure we can fix this bit. So let's get everything cleaned. I'm going to wash it in some hot soapy water, and then we can start putting the trailer section back together. Now that everything's cleaned and dried, we can start fixing some of the issues on this very bottom section of the truck trailer, which is the little hinge fixings for the rear ramp. So this is the trailer bottom we're going to use, mainly because the little release clip thing that fires the sort of internal firing mechanism isn't broken on this one. This one is snapped off, and there's no real way of replacing that, because you actually have to put pressure on it and bend it. So really I'm going to use this one. This base has a few other issues, but I think we can fix them all. One of the simple issues was that the little hinge section on this side is actually cracked, but I'm just going to heat that up with a hairdryer at some point just to warm the plastic, that I can bend it back and I'll glue that in place, and by the time the metal bar goes goes through, that shouldn't be an issue. But really the thing we need to fix is this missing hinge. So we're going to take the one off this one and stick it on here. Now it should be relatively easy to do that. This one is broken fairly neatly on this side. There's a little bit of excess plastic, so I'm just going to use a scalpel just to gently sort of cut that excess plastic away so that we've got a nice flat edge there, like so. You can see it's just a slight bit, so we just need a little bit of sort of fine tuning just to get that quite flat. And then we're going to cut this one off and glue it in place. Now I'm hoping that we should just be able to glue it enough, again because the metal rod, here we have one of the metal rods, slides all the way through here. That should actually give it some extra strength at this sort of back end. So I'm hoping that by the time that rod is in place and we've stuck that on, there will be enough sort of to hold it, that it should hold in place when the ramp goes back on. It may still be a little bit weak, but I think this is the best thing we can do. So what we're going to do is cut this one off. Now I have a pair of plastic nippers here, and I want to cut off as sort of around it. I don't want to cut it off in the sort of the final sort of position I'm going to do it. I'm actually going to cut off way more than I need and then work it back when it's out of this sort of awkward position. So I'm just going to gently use the plastic nippers to sort of cut the plastic, and I'm hoping that actually broke a lot easier than I thought. So it did. That's broken slightly more than I wanted. I didn't realise it was going to shatter like that, but I think we can still work with that. So let's get modifying this and see what we can do. As it seems this plastic is fairly brittle, brittler than I thought, I'm just going to carefully sort of nip this away a little bit at a time. And hopefully that should enable me to nip it back just to the sort of inside of that little ridge there. But I'll just do it ever so slowly because it does seem much brittler than I thought. So a little bit of fiddling. I've managed to trim that down. As you can see, I've got a slight sort of edge there, which is pretty good. It's got quite a nice surface to it. So unfortunately, because it did snap a bit, I've got a little awkward sort of divot here on the end, but that shouldn't be too hard to work out. So what I want to do is actually slightly trim away the inside edge of this good section and make a little sort of dent that this should then just slot in like so. So really what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use my scalpel here to mark roughly where I need to cut, which is about there. Just make a little mark in it so I can just gently work away cutting that plastic until I've got a sort of area that I'm happy with, and then I'll try and make good this little bit here, sort of cut a little space so that that should fit in. Doesn't look like it should cause me too much issues, but some careful cutting ahead. Not bad, a little bit more and it should fit quite nicely. So after a little bit of fine tuning and gentle filing, I've managed to get the sort of fit actually pretty snug there. You can see that's a pretty good match, and there's quite a lot of surface area there that I reckon that there'll be enough glue to hold everything in place, especially once the metal rod is put in place. Let's just try that. I'll slot the rod in like so, and then we can slot this on over the top of it and glue that in place. So yeah, I think there'll certainly be enough there that everything should hold quite firmly, and I'm hoping that the hinge will then work quite nicely. So let's get this glued in place. I'm also going to glue and repair this at the same time. So I'm just going to be using some super glue. This is just Loctite super glue. I find this works pretty well. So let's get a gentle, small little blob of super glue on here, all along where I've cut and filed. And then along that little section as well, because that's where it had also snapped. And we can then slot this in place and hold it till the glue goes off. Now that these have had time to dry, we can check them out. So I've got the ramp here. Now you don't want to put too much pressure on this new one. I'm going to try and bend the old one to get the ramp in place. I'll just slot that in there and I should be able to just gently push that in place. And there we go, that ramp fitting seems to work quite nicely. So by the time we've got the metal rod in, that's going to be pretty sturdy. So I'm pretty pleased with that. We can now go ahead and start putting this bottom section of their trailer back together and try and get this firing mechanism working, because I wasn't really sure why that wasn't firing properly, but let's see what happens when we put it back together. First up, we need to put the little robot arm bits back together. Now I didn't take this one to pieces because it wasn't that dirty, just a gentle brush with a bit of water fixed it, and this one does actually have the little missile launcher springs inside it, so I didn't really bother to do that just because it was not really necessary. But we can fix this back onto the little mounting section. Now I've taken the best bits of both of these trailers, so this is the best part of the trailer, so we can just slot that over there. Drop that one over there, and then it's 2 screws just to screw this back together, which I have here. We need to do this before we actually put the rest of it together, because this is integral to holding the launch mechanism in place, so I have to get this one ready first. If you find when putting the little robot arm part together that it's a little bit loose on this peg, all you need to do is drop a little bit of super glue on. You can see here I've dropped a bit of super glue on, and let that go off, and it needs to go off fully so it's no longer sticky. Then when you come to put on the arm, you can push it on and you can feel it will be a much tighter fit, because there's now an extra bit of sort of force in there to hold everything in place, and the arm will now be able to stand upright, whereas it should do. So it's just a little bit of glue on there is all you need, but do make sure that it's gone off fully before you come to put this together, otherwise you're likely to stick this arm in place, and that's not what you want to do. Now I've just been having a look at the mechanism for this and seeing if I could get it to work, and it seems, I'm not sure if this is a design flaw, if this is just something that's happened with age, but when you come to try and launch the missile launcher, it gets caught on these 2 little sort of large grey lumps that are on this spring mechanism here. Now I've tried bending those gently out of the way and it does fire better, but actually the simplest option was, if we look at the 2 mechanisms here, this is one I've not modified and this is one I have. Inside the mechanisms there are these 2 little slots that you see here on the right hand side, and so all I've done is the one on the left hand side, you can see I have just trimmed the bottom corners of those off, so they're now at a slight angle. If I show you the ones that haven't been trimmed, you can see they're straight down, and these ones here have been trimmed to a slight angle, and this firing mechanism now works. So I'm not sure if that's just a design flaw or something that's happened with age, but by trimming those little corners off just with a pair of plastic nippers, the mechanism now should work. So we'll put this back together and you can see what I mean. So what we've got to do, take this mechanism, it has 2 ends, it's got a little sort of T-junction end, and you slot that in towards the back of the trailer, and then this should just lay flat like so. And then we can turn the whole thing over, and on the bottom side we take one of the long springs that we've taken off and hook that on this little hook at that end, so just hook that on like so. Then we can take the bottom section which holds the wheels, and this has a similar hook at the other end. This large lump goes towards the back of the trailer, and we can then hook the spring onto that hook like so. And then this all sort of slides in place, and the smaller end hooks under a little section at the sort of front end of the cab, and we can slot that down like that. Before we start screwing everything together, we've actually got a few more bits to put in place, but that spring mechanism is the sort of awkward bit that you have to do first. So we need to slot in the little legs that go either side, and again this is all under tension now, so you can just sort of lift these up, and as long as you hold everything in place, they should be able to be slotted in without everything pinging out. So we can slot that in, and I'm just going to rotate them around to keep them out of the way, and push that back down. And then we've got the 2 wheels to put in place again, so I've taken the best 2 of the wheel axles, and those just drop in there like that. There's 2 little notches each side, and then we can take the bottom section, which is this, and that slots over, and now we can start putting some screws back in place, and then we'll put the top on, we can test the mechanism. So just going to grab a couple of screws out of the screw pot and start screwing this back together, and then we'll put the top on and check that the mechanism actually works. So there are all the screws done in the bottom. Now we've just got to add this top section with the little robot fixer thing on it. So again, This has two little sort of tabs on the front which have to slide under two tabs on the grey section and behind the launcher, and then there are two little sort of pegs that it needs to sit in front of there, and again we can then turn this over and just screw that in place, and at this point we can then check that the launcher actually launches. So we can now turn this over, and it should be that if I press this button the launcher will fire. There we go. It's always been a bit fiddly, you have to push quite hard, and I think that's why a lot of these tabs are broken. So if we push it, it does actually launch. And I've previously done a video where I've shown you how to modify this European version of the launcher to be like the Japanese one, which should fire the full length of this little running slip here, and fires Roller out at a much higher speed. For some reason the UK version is only allowed to travel like less than a centimetre, and so Roller really barely moves out the back of the truck, which is a bit of a shame. So check out my video on that if you want to see how to modify this to make it fire a lot faster. Now the last thing to do is to put these side panels back in place. Unfortunately one of these side panels does still have a little bit of damage. You can see here there's a small section that's cracked off, but maybe I can find another one of this panel to replace it with. The trailer sections are actually relatively easy to find, but more often than not, as I've said, you have the little hinge bit here broken, so I'm hoping that I could probably find another one of these and just swap this out, but for the moment it will do the job. So again, all you've got to do is to slide this in place between all of the little sort of mounting sections. There should be quite easy to do. Can't say I can do it now. There we go. And then we can push the metal rod back in, and we'll go through. This is the side that I've replaced, so this was the one that was broken, so just have to be a little bit more careful with this one. You don't want to twist it too much, but you can just push this all the way through. Right to the end. This feels like it should be a much easier job, but you just have to go carefully with it. Sometimes twisting, there you go, helps. There we go, so that's that rod in, and we can now see that that side panel works. And that hinge has now got a little bit of extra support. So I'll put the other side on, then we can put the final trailer ramp on, and then that's this trailer restored. One thing of interest that I noticed while putting this back together that I hadn't actually noticed while doing the repair is that the right hand part of the hinge is actually a lot thicker than the left hand. If you look here you can see that's about almost just slightly under a centimetre wide. If we look at the other one, it's only about sort of 6mm. It's a lot thinner. So it's obvious that they changed this halfway through the production, so that because this was an area that was breaking off quite commonly, they tried to thicken it up with the one on this side. So that's something I didn't actually notice when I was sort of cutting and pasting them together. I really should have done, because it's quite obvious. But it also means that the ramp now, when I come to lower it, was actually getting caught on this little corner here. So I've just slightly trimmed that corner down so that the ramp can now move quite freely and doesn't get caught on it. Without cutting that corner off, it was tending to get stuck at sort of halfway point. So just a little bit of a trim there has fixed that quite nicely. The last thing we need to fix on this is the stickers. A few of them have just come loose over the years. You can see here if I just lift this one up, it's not fully unstuck, but the edges are starting to peel away, as is this one here. So I'm just going to use a pair of tweezers just so that I can gently lift these up, and a cotton bud and some Pritt stick. So all we've got to do is put a little bit of Pritt stick on the cotton bud like that. And now on this one over here I don't need to use the tweezers, I can just use my hand to gently sort of rub the glue on the back of the sticker. I don't want to remove the whole sticker, there's no point in unsticking it, you're liable to cause more damage. But I can just put a bit of Pritt stick on that, and then gently press that back in place, and you can see that sticks quite nicely. So I'm just going to work my way around all of the stickers on this and re-stick any that are coming loose, like these ones here, and then that should be enough. And here is the trailer fully put back together. As you can see, it actually doesn't look too bad now. It is a full trailer. There's a little bit of minor damage on this side panel, as I showed you earlier. It's a bit of a shame that that is cracked, but that's actually snapped off of the whole of this side panel. So I may see if I can find another one of these. But if we open up the trailer by opening the rear ramp, which now works nicely, and we can then split apart the two trailer sections, and all the stickers are held in place, and we can now fold up the sort of robot section there and put that all in the correct position. And we should be able to fire this as well. If I push that back into the sort of ready to fire position and press the button, it fires out as it should do. So it's starting to work quite nicely. As you can see, there's a few little bits that are fiddly to fix. These little ramp hinges are a bit of a pain to do, but really you see these are broken so often it's worth spending the time getting that fixed, and it means that you can repair something that would otherwise sort of be a bit useless, because without the those ramp hinges then this back panel falls off. So that just leaves us now with trying to fix Optimus Prime, which I will do in the second part of this restoration. The Prime I have here is in a pretty sorry state, but I reckon we can fix it. I still need to find and hunt down a few parts, because obviously the front grille section is snapped, and I'm missing all the accessories really. I have one fist for Prime, but I'm missing all of his guns and hoses and missiles, and even roller from the back section of the trailer here. So I'm hoping that I can find those, but if anyone out there has any spares that they'd like to trade with me, then please do get in touch. I have plenty of toy bits to trade, or toy-polloi fridge magnets and stickers. So I hope this video has been of interest to you, and thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching toy-polloi. Subscribe for more great videos. You can also follow toy-polloi on Twitter and Facebook.